Welcome to
Peas in a Podcast.
If you've ever thought, why didn't somebody tell me this before I started managing the team, you are in the right place.
Each week we unpack the human stuff that makes or breaks a business without the corporate wank. And this week we're talking about...
psychological safety in the workplace.
You said that with skepticism.
Well, it just sounds really wanky, doesn't it?
Yeah, we said we're not going to do wank,
Yeah.
and yet we say the words psychological safety.
The problem is, like we've just debated for about 7 minutes, there is no other way of really calling psychological safety anything else.
Yeah, exactly. So we probably should just call it what it is, do the Ron Seal thing.
Yeah.
Do what it says on the tin.
But also explain what it is. Like,
Yeah.
It's one of those things that sounds really obvious, but not many employers or managers understand what it is, know it exists,
Yeah.
and therefore couldn't appreciate the importance of it in terms of the impact on employee engagement, productivity, and workplace culture.
Yeah, and bottom line, and money
Yeah,
at the end of the day as
which
well.
is what all that boils down to. You don't care about anything else.
Yeah, care about that.
Yeah.
But it is really interesting when we put... Oh, it's interesting.
Yes,
I
you
always
do.
say interesting. For God's sake, the ban on the word interesting is going really well. So we'll start that from now.
Okay. Yes.
But when we ask our boss mode participants about psychological safety, and it comes up several times through all of the modules for different reasons, they actually often don't, when we say what it is, what is it? Sorry, explain it. They actually don't know, or they haven't consciously thought about it.
No.
And that, for us, where we say it every day, day in, day out, and
Yeah.
think there's a common understanding, actually there isn't. So let's talk about what it is.
Okay, so what is it?
What is it? Let's stop keeping it a secret. Basically, in a nutshell, it's turning up to work and feeling safe, both from a physical, but also in this case, from a mental health perspective. So being free from harm at its kind of on the negative front, but on the positive, being able to show up exactly as you are, make mistakes, own those mistakes, feel able to make a meaningful contribution in terms of sharing ideas without judgment, retribution, or feeling silly, I guess. It's feeling like you can just be who you are confidently and make a contribution.
I think it's more than that as well, isn't it? It's generally about feeling valued, however you perceive your own worth in that sense. So feeling valued, feeling recognised, feeling secure, feeling that you have development, feeling that you're trusted. It's that you have job security. There's so many different elements of what makes somebody feel psychologically safe in their job role.
Yeah, it is. And like you say, it's inherently subjective and very, very personal. So it's hard. It's actually a hard job for managers and business leaders to get a grip on it and therefore know their own role in creating it, because it requires quite a lot of emotional intelligence and ability to operate in grey, but also curiosity, if I can say the word, about the way other people think and feel, which isn't actually something that some people naturally possess. It has to be worked at.
And I think that's where some managers fall short, where they think that everybody thinks or should think and feel and perceive the same way they do, and actually you're dealing with very different human beings, aren't you? And you have to find a way of being able to create that performance optimized culture that we talk about, that feels psychologically safe in a way that works for everybody, regardless of their demographics, their backgrounds, their values, their beliefs, and what's important to them.
Yeah, and we know that in the interest of psychological safety, there's no blame attached to thinking like that, because actually that's the human bias. We know that that is one of the types of bias, is to assume that the world sees the world through a lens that is similar to our own. And that helps us, our bias in that, because it helps us make sense of things. So again, that there's no blame there, but it's worth being aware of the fact that that's not the case, so that you can challenge yourself when you fall into that trap as a manager. And it's really, really important, because there's a massive cost attached to not working at creating psychological safety, at a financial cost, and it's estimated, because it's quite hard to quantify, around £15.7 billion in the UK SME world is lost to a lack of psychological safety.
And this is where I think this is a subject area that overlaps between what you and I do and care about in our respective parts of the business, because you're right, it's really, really hard to quantify. but there are certain areas where you see it. When that's the thing. When you don't get psychological safety right, it shows up in staff turnover, employee happiness levels, according and engagement levels, according to survey results, and productivity. It shows up in absence rates, the levels of absenteeism that you're dealing with in your workforce. There's a number of different actually really problematic ways that a lack of psychological safety does show up. It's just part of the problem is that managers and business owners don't recognise that that's the root cause of some of those issues.
Yes.
Would you say that?
Absolutely. They'll see the symptoms. They'll see that someone's off sick. They'll see that somebody's not sharing ideas or working to their full potential, whatever that potential might look like. They'll know that they've made hires and those people may not have last and they're having to rehire. They'll know that there's conflict and that conflict is taking up their time and energy. They'll know that they are having one-to-ones with employees and not able to get meaningful dialogue going with them, so they don't really understand where the barriers and blockers are to having an optimized performance. They'll see all of that, but perhaps what they won't do is sort of peel the layers of that back to perhaps being a lack of psychological safety, and instead maybe again blaming other things like the employees' will or skill level. And actually you might have will and skill. We talk about underperformance issues. Actually, could it be a lack of confidence which comes from a lack of psychological safety in the workplace?
Or could it come from a lack of commitment, which comes from a lack of psychological safety in the workplace?
Exactly. It's why,
Any
why,
conduct issue, you want to do that root cause analysis, like you said, instead of just focusing on the symptoms and trying to tackle them at that level.
And I heard a really good phrase about this, because often when we perceive, again, looking through the lens of everybody thinking the same way we do, and as business leaders, we tend to feel quite psychologically safe because it's either our organisation or we're very senior or very established in the organisation. So it's hard to look at things from somebody else's perspective. We can get quite cross about those symptoms. And one of the really cool expressions I heard was, when you're furious, get curious. And that really leans into a lot of the stuff we talk about when it comes to addressing performance concerns or issues within the team, is go in with an attitude of curiosity, so you don't have to climb down from a position that you've assumed based on an assumption that a person has bad intentions or a character flaw that is in some way contributing to the issue you're trying to resolve. So I loved that expression. I was like, when you're furious, get curious. I might get a t-shirt made out of it. But what's really interesting about the cost is that the benefit is much harder to quantify. So I feel for business leaders in a way, because they're saying, okay, well, it's a bit like the carrot and stick thing. You're telling me that there's a load of money I can be losing that I'm leaving on the table, and a load of hassle that I can save myself if I don't think about psychological safety. But I think it's good to bring out the carrot a little bit as well and talk about what you can actually get as a result of bothering to do this. And we talk a lot about the stuff that I do as being fluffy. For me, it's not fluffy, it's fundamental. It's tactical. There are tactical leadership behaviours and skills required to be able to develop psychological safety, so that you can recognise those benefits, like having a team that want to contribute, having a team that want to share their ideas, having a team that are committed, enthusiastic, want to make a contribution, go the extra mile,
loyal, flexible, all those things you get when you get the psychological contact, right?
Want to get along with each other and make the relationships work and do their part to make the relationships work, want to own up to mistakes. So one of the big factors in that financial loss is where mistakes are buried or covered up, and they aggregate and then create a massive catastrophic error or mistake that you can't hide anymore, because you didn't feel able to say, I've messed this up, because you're worrying so much about the retribution that will come with that, whether the retribution is you being penalized, or whether it's made fun of, or whether it's just the cold shoulder from your manager and that feeling of being in trouble that we all really try desperately hard to not invoke, because it takes you right back to being a kid and being told off by your parents. So there's so much value to be recognised from creating it.
I think there is something about that whole blame culture thing as well, because when you do get it right and you allow your staff members to make mistakes, on the basis that you will, and that you have that transparency, that they can admit them. I think when you do get it right, I think what that comes with is employees who become so much harder on themselves when they make mistakes than you as a manager could ever be on them. And I think our own team's a really great example of that. We're not perfect, we're all humans, we all make mistakes. You and I cock up more than the average person.
Most of the time.
And I actually think that's really good role modelling, because when we do it, we are furious with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we focus immediately on the solution. There isn't a blame culture. You and I don't go into some sort of conflict.
No.
You're screwing up the business. No, you're screwing up the business.
Yeah.
And we probably could have legitimately gone through that route a few times. But instead, we just focus on what the solution is and what we need to do to get things back on track.
Yeah.
And as a result, we're role modeling the behaviours that we want from our team when they inevitably get things wrong.
Yeah.
And we have this thing with our team, don't we, where they could make a mistake and we would sit down with them and say, I could be angry about you at this and I feel angry, but at the same time, I know you're hard. You're going to be much harder on yourself than I ever can be on you. So that's enough for me.
Yeah.
And I know as a result, you're going to try really hard not to make this mistake again.
Yeah.
If it's within your control not to.
And that's the point, isn't it? That conversation, if it's focused on the solutions and putting the immediate, whatever reparatory action in place, there's often time, space as well for reflection. But again, that reflection needs to come with what resources can we learn and harvest to take forward. So it's still future paced. Even if we're reflecting on the mistake, we're not dwelling, we're not ruminating, we're reflecting, gathering up the learnings and the resources and then taking them forward. And that's those are two very, very different things. We're not reflecting so that we can continue the punishment and the self-criticism and the disapproval process, because that is not going to create the outcome that you want in terms of an employee feeling like, okay, I got it wrong. I felt bad. I can see I've let manager, team, customer down. I don't want to feel like that again. But ultimately, I know I don't have to be perfect, because that is a very dangerous place to put yourself as either a manager or an employee, is feeling like you have to be infallible.
Yeah, when your manager or your company has no tolerance for incompetency or for mistakes.
And confidence and perfection cannot coexist. They cannot coexist. You cannot feel like you need to be perfect and feel confident. You cannot feel fearful and feel confident at the same time. And we know with confidence comes productivity, comes the ability to take ownership over things and responsibility and to take risks. And businesses need risks. We can't be completely risk adverse. So an employee will stay small if you make them feel small. And that's not what we want for a business. That doesn't give us the results we're looking for. We know that time and time again. There's been countless studies.
It's about innovation, isn't it? You're stifling innovation, because to innovate, you have to try new things. To try new things, you don't know how they're going to turn out. Therefore, they could eventually turn out wrong. But the point being is, if you want to create an environment where you want your staff to be empowered and to innovate, you have to allow them to get things wrong.
Yeah. And there is a little piece here around the fear of innovation. So some managers worry about innovation because they want to keep control. Some worry about innovation because they want to do it their way, because they do believe that their way is the only way and the right way. And some see innovation or employees sharing ideas, especially in public forums or meetings, as challenge. And we've come across all of those examples, and they're all really valid, because what you don't want to do is create an environment. It's like anything, it's a pendulum, isn't it? If you swing too far in the direction of all we want is ideas, then we don't have any follow through. And as a manager, I've met several in coaching scenarios where they say, but if I invite ideas, then all I'm getting is ideas and I need them to stay on track with something. So sometimes I don't want an idea. And that's when it comes back to that balance of enablement or accountability, and also support and encouragement and helping people to thrive. It's making sure, back to our leadership styles, that you know when you want what. But if you never ask for ideas, then you are going to create a culture of compliance and a culture of low level fear. So it's being able to have a relationship where normally in the course of any day, you're welcoming ideas and you're thanking people for ideas, even if they're stupid, because knowing as a manager what it takes for somebody to actually voice an idea, if you're not a manager, if you are new to a business, it takes a lot for somebody to feel psychologically safe enough to say, I've got an idea about this. I think you could do this differently.
It's not just about safety in that respect, though. If an employee has an idea and they want to share it, it shows that they are thinking about how they can better their team or their department or their service or the business in some way. That type of mindset should always be appreciated and valued. Like you said, even if it's
not right.
Even if it's completely missed the mark. The point being is that your employee cares enough to want to help you grow in some way. And that should never be discarded.
No. If it's the wrong format, the wrong time, you can say that without dismissing somebody. You can say, I really appreciate your idea. Thank you so much. That's not where we're headed right now. I'm going to take it on board. Maybe we can revisit it later. I would like to get back to what we're doing. I need us to focus on this particular thing. But thank you. It's just the acknowledgement, like you say, that somebody had an idea and wanted to make a contribution. You don't need to take it forward. But what we tend to see is managers go, okay, well, I need to create this environment where everyone can share ideas. Therefore, I can't shut any idea down. Therefore, I get completely derailed by the ideas and I can't let that happen. So I'd rather go the other way and just tell people that I don't want their ideas or dismiss them or bat them back. And there needs to be a happy medium where you can keep both control whilst acknowledging somebody's idea and somebody's creativity and somebody's innovation and somebody's commitment at the same time.
See, conversely, I see it in conflict situations where where I get brought in to deal with conduct issues, and I see employees who are angry. They're angry at their employer because they feel like their ideas have been ignored. And the problem is, over time, that has escalated into quite unproductive conduct, aggressive, confrontational, disruptive types of behaviour. But what I can hear is that they're still trying to get their view across. They're still trying to get their point across. They're still trying to say, you are not getting this right. This is disabling me in some way. And we love that phrase, right? You're disabling me. That's what they're trying to say. They're just saying it in such a toxic and unproductive way that actually all the employer sees is the behaviour. They don't hear the message, which is actually your employee is trying to tell you that they could do their job better for you if you heard them. And being the fact that they're on the front line and they're doing the job day to day, you might want to give that view some validity.
Yeah, or at least some airtime.
Yeah, it's like we went into a business about 6 months ago, didn't we? And they spent, over $1 million? No, over a couple of £100,000 on a new system that the very department that were going to have to administer it knew was going to fail from the outset. I remember our days in Welfare to Work when they first brought in the work programme and employee support allowance. And they had that five-stage job focused interview process, and then there had to be a medical assessment first for any benefit claimants that were going to go on to this new benefit. And I was leading the Hampshire's delivery of it, and I remember seeing how flawed it was from the outset. This entire DWP program that had spent months, if not years, on developing, and I straight away saw how it was going to fail, and as a result, how we were going to fail as the prime provider for that programme in Hampshire. And I remember standing up and getting into a really confrontational exchange with Chris Grayling at the DWP conference about 6 months ago, because I was like, why didn't you consult the very people that were going to have to deliver this? This was always going to be flawed. And sure enough, we were seeing people who had 6 months left to live.
Yeah.
At work-focused interviews. It was horrific.
Yeah.
And it's the people at the top that make decisions about these things, about whether it's the development of a program, whether it's installing a new software system, whatever it might be, they don't consult the very people that have to deliver it. And I remember feeling that frustrated. And then the problem is passion shows itself up sometimes as aggressive, confrontational, and disruptive.
And eventually, what's the point?
Yeah. And we'd always say, like, when your employees go silent, that's when you do have something to worry about. All the time they're disrupting, all the time they're really passionately confrontational. At least they care. They're trying to tell you that you could get this right.
Yeah. And taking it back to where the leadership then needs to take control of it, so they don't feel like that's out of control. Because all that sounds great if you have the leadership skills and abilities, shout out to Boss Mode Bootcamp, to be able to take all of that passion, take all of those ideas, take all of that creative thinking, and harness it in such a way that you don't feel overly challenged, overly criticized, that you've lost control, that you're stuck in decision paralysis, that you've lost momentum, that people are just throwing ideas around and everybody's different perceptions, and you're stuck in this loop of innovation. There is a need for a manager to take all of that passion and harness it, and to be clear about when ideas are needed and welcomed, where they're always welcomed, how they should be shared, and the how being not just, is this the meeting for it? Is this the forum for it? Is this the one-to-one that I want to hear about this? But also when it's time to focus and commit, when we've reached a point where we've finished exchanging ideas and we need to move forward. It takes us back to our lovely 5 dysfunctions model that we always talk about. But there is a time where a leader has to call it and say, whilst I appreciate and thank you so much, and listen actively and earnestly to the views, not just pay lip service, make sure that employee feels heard, but also make sure they are aware, one, that there are appropriate forums, and two, there are appropriate methods, and they need to be fitting in line with the values. Because I think that's one of the other barriers that I hear from managers in coaching is, but they're just whinging at me. That's very different from sharing an idea in a constructive way. One of the things I would say to a leader, if they're thinking, well, I don't know if I have psychological safety or not, one of the things I would say is your feedback should have been mixed. If you're getting people that tell you you're doing a great job all the time, then you haven't got psychological safety. Equally, if you're hearing nothing, you haven't got psychological safety. If you have a nice, healthy balance of people, sort of generally endorsing what's going on in the company and kind of affirming what's happening, great. But if you've also got a healthy mix of people going, this doesn't work, and it would be better if we did it like this, and I don't see the point of this thing, or why are we having this meeting? That's great. We want that, because that's the balance you want, that shows you that there is in fact psychological safety. However, you do get to challenge somebody if that has tipped into whinging or unconstructive. And one of the things that you can easily do, and we've taught this millions of times, is as a manager, you can say, I really appreciate the feedback and we welcome it and I want it. I would like it to come in a more helpful way. And I would like you to own, or at least co-own with me, the solution. So maybe bring a few different solutions, or maybe come with an attitude of, I don't like this. I don't think this is right. Here's how I think it could be better. But still, at the end of the day, if nothing changes, I want to be able to say to you, I hear you. This is great feedback. I don't necessarily agree with you, and I'm not going to do anything about it now. Because when managers don't do that piece, they go, thank you, that's really interesting, I'll think about that. And then 3 months later, the idea still hasn't landed and you've never revisited it as a manager, that employee you'll still get those negative side effects. They'll still think, what's the point? They'll still think they took the feedback and did nothing with it. Or they're not listening to me. My voice doesn't matter. So as much as a hard no is a problem, so's a we'll revisit that, and entertaining it too far.
Yeah,
it's a real fine line of appreciating and acknowledging, but equally being clear about, actually, right here and now, there's a reason we do it this way and we're not going to change it. But thank you.
And I think what you're talking about is healthy conflict. And I think it comes back to those tangible outcomes that you can measure to know that you're getting it right. It's probably a good way of summarising this. When your team can engage in healthy conflict and you can control that conflict, and they don't walk away feeling resentful or that their query's been unheard or unresolved. When people are generally engaged and happy, when their productivity levels are high, when they're committed, when they're loyal, when absenteeism issues are low, and when staff retention is high.
Yeah.
You get all of those things right in combination. That's when you generally know that you're getting it right?
It is. I think there's probably one thing that would be really strong to finish on, and that's the leader's ability to role model this effectively on a very practical level. So things that they can do, because it's possible to expect all of these things from your team and not do this yourself. And actually then you're going to be losing a really, really important opportunity that you have as a manager to show people how to do things on a day-to-day basis. So there's top three things that I would want to be saying to any manager that's listening to think about if they're thinking, okay, well, that all sounds really great, but how do I role model that? The first is clarity. So to be really clear when and how things are to be done. Because without clarity, psychological safety can't happen. Without clarity, people can't operate confidently. So whether that's when they are giving instructions, delegating, to let people know how much decision-making authority they have, how much feedback that is wanted, and where, why, what, and how they want done.
Because
manage expectation, but manage at a task level if you have to. Be really clear. The second is vulnerability. As a manager, we've talked about admitting when you get things wrong. We've also talked about, but what we haven't talked about, is asking for help. So one of the things we want to be encouraging employees to do is not do it all on their own, is to admit when they are struggling before it becomes a problem. So when psychological safety or a lack of psychological safety tips into harm, it's where people are role modeling or manage our role modeling that we just get through things, that we just keep going, that we keep plugging away, that we should be able to do things by ourselves, that we should be able to meet a really high expectation, and to be self-critical when we don't. As managers, is a perseverance. Yeah, it's a real difference between perseverance and self-punishment. And I think as a leader, to be vulnerable is to be able to say something that your employees could judge you for. I'm struggling. I'm not feeling like myself today. I feel like I'm having a bit of a dip. I'm feeling like I only really need you guys with me. I'm wobbling. And that, from a psychological safety perspective, is permission to not be perfect, but also to be fallible. And that's the third one, to be fallible. You mentioned about us owning our mistakes. I think it's a really important point to not just role model ownership of mistakes, but to celebrate mistakes as well, and actually treat them as learning opportunities, and to show, even as a manager, that you can be totally fallible. So make the mistakes public, even if you're sharing them after the most painful piece. We've been working, for example, on a portal that we're delivering for our team.
2.5 years.
We brought last year we brought in a CRM. We've spectacularly cocked up both of those projects, and we've had to really learn from them. We've never done them before. Doesn't mean we feel any less secure about ourselves as managers, as leaders, as business owners, and it doesn't mean that our employees are judging us, but we want to admit we got this wrong and not try and hide from that. It's about saying, I want to take this opportunity to tell you something I got wrong, because that shows fallibility. So clarity, vulnerability, and fallibility. If you're looking for areas that you can improve, we talked about right at the beginning, this being a skill set that, or a process that is really hard to put some kind of tactical behaviours around. For me, those are the tactical behaviours. So if somebody wants to work on bringing psychological safety, it starts with them. And those are the three areas to look at first.
And it makes sense, because they talk to who you are from an integrity perspective, who you are as a leader, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Right. Okay. That's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with your network and follow us on our socials at PIAP Consulting.
Join us next time. And until then, remember, people problems don't fix themselves.
And healthy cultures never happen by accident.
See you
next Tuesday.